I will introduce myself. We'll have the rest of the introductions in just a few minutes when we get into the slides here. But we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you to everybody in the attendees room. It looks like we already have about 35 people here, and we really appreciate your attendance this evening. My name is Craig Bentz. I'm with the Office of the Chief Development Officer, which is part of the Mayor's Office, and I'm the coordinator for the Coldstream Master Plan project that you're going to hear about tonight. Thank you again for attending this meeting and for being part of what's turning out to be a great turnout to ensure that we receive input from Kearney Hall, Coventry, and the surrounding community and stakeholders regarding the master planning of this 200-acre site. This project resulted from a 2018 agreement with the University of Kentucky by which the city of Lexington takes ownership of the 200-acre site in Coldstream, which you may have heard in the past referred to as the Turkey Neck property, by July of 2022 at the latest. So by mid next year, the city will have ownership of the property. The agreement between the city and UK specifically requires transfer of ownership for economic development use of the property, which is culminated in the master plan you'll hear more about in a few minutes, utilizing the site as a business and industrial park. So before we continue with project team introductions and the presentation today, I'd like to recognize Council Members Plomin, your District 12 Council Member, and McKern, Councilmember McKern, the District 2 Council Member, and ask them if they'd like to say a few words at this time.
Sure. Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, good evening. I'm Kathy Plomin, and I represent the 12th District here in Lexington, Kentucky. So Kearney Hall area around this development, I would be your council member, but I'm really happy to join tonight with our economic development group to learn more about the opportunities that are going to be nearby you on the Georgetown Road property. And you're going to hear a lot more in detail. And if you have questions or you need more information or would like to talk to me after this or tomorrow, call 311 and just be connected to Council Member Kathy Plomin's office, and we'll take it from there. But again, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
I'll chime in and echo the same thing. I'm Josh McKern. I'm the 2nd District Council Member, and I represent Coventry and majority of the Georgetown Street and Citation Corridor as well. And I do want to thank everybody for being on this evening from the neighborhoods and from the Economic Development Team and the Industrial Authority Board as well. I do have the privilege of serving on the Industrial Authority and helping with some of the conversation flow of what is going on in the Coldstream property in these 200 acres. And I'm thrilled to see this investment into our city and what is to come from it. But I'm very much so looking forward to hearing from all of the neighbors and the residents in the surrounding area, as well as the rest of the community who may be on this call tonight. If, as Councilmember Plomin mentioned here, if you have any questions outside of this meeting, if you don't get the opportunity to have your question answered or get to speak, please feel free to reach out to us. You can call 311, you can email us, you can call our offices as well. And each one of us would be happy to reach out and sit down or have a conversation along with this project. Thank you all for being here, and thank you all for hosting this meeting as well.
Great, thank you, council members. Aaron, could you put up the slides and we'll get started with the presentation?
Yeah, I think you should see it now.
I do, thank you. Can you go to the next one? All right, great, thank you. So this slide shows our project team that you'll be hearing from this evening. Gresham Smith is leading the master planning effort, and you'll hear from Lewis Johnson and Aaron Hathaway, as well as Morgan Dene with Gresham Smith. Their team also includes Third Rock Consultants, Commonwealth Economics, and Cultural Resource Analysts. Kevin Atkins is also a panelist this evening. He's the Chief Development Officer for the city. Next slide, please. This slide here, and hopefully this is big enough on everybody's screen to kind of see this, but this shows the location as well as the context of the 200-acre site that we're talking about this evening. 6475 is just to the north of the site and contiguous to the site. Georgetown Road is directly to the west of the site. The Kearney Hall and Coventry neighborhoods, as you know, are both adjacent to the site. And south of the site, we have the Bluegrass Business Park, Coventry Oak Elementary School, as well as Coldstream Research Park as a whole. Next slide, please. So the Industrial Authority and the project team believe that this site's location is ideal for economic development and job creation opportunities, as well as creating a real amenity for the adjacent community. And that's why we want to hear from you today. Next slide. This slide shows in a graphic form the project schedule, which began late last year with a comprehensive analysis of the site and moved into the design of the master plan for the first and second quarters of this year. Stakeholder and public engagement has really been a key element of the process, and we've engaged the Transportation Cabinet, Lextran, the Economic Development Cabinet, the development community, UK, and of course now the neighborhoods this evening. Future tasks that we have coming up are shown on the bottom of that slide outside of the boxed tasks, and those generally include the permitting and construction processes that'll happen in the future. Erin and her team will guide you through the rest of the presentation from this point forward.
Thanks, Craig. And again, I'll just echo everyone else's thanking you, everyone who is able to join us tonight. I know the last thing everyone wants to do right now is to join another Zoom call, but I appreciate your time, and I'll try to get through these slides and get to your questions. And you know, we're looking to get feedback tonight. So the first slide that you'll see on your screen right now is how to join an interactive poll. So throughout the presentation, there'll be slides where we ask you questions, and those you'll answer them, and it'll be fed on the screen as we go through. So what you'll do is, if you have your phone with you or an extra screen, feel free to pull that up and go to menti.com, menti.com. And then on the next screen, there'll be a code that you put into the website that you pull up, and let's give this a shot. So first question, this is sort of an icebreaker just to get everyone using this sort of interactive polling, is how did you hear about this meeting? So you should go to www.menti.com, and then the code up at the top is 82086433. And then, you know, put in how you found out about this meeting, whether it was through a website, by a friend told you about it, maybe you saw some yard signs. I'm just trying to get some feedback on how folks found out about it. Hopefully it should be working. If it's not working, I have some workarounds for you, but wonder if, seems like we should have some answers by now. Okay, here we go. I'll just pull up the screen on this side, and hopefully y'all can see it from there. All right, so looks like most people heard by letter. I see some yard signs, an email, HOA, the website, oh, a Facebook post, a neighbor. Craig told me. Great. So it looks like we have 30 responses and we have 60 participants. So I'll let it hang out here a little bit more and see if we can get more people used to using this before we go on in the presentation.
And Aaron, once you have it up, it'll just refresh as the slides go. So you don't need to keep going back to menti.com. You just, once you have it up, just leave it up and
yeah,
it'll refresh for you.
That's right. Just leave it, like if you have it on your phone, just leave that screen there, and it'll switch as I switch the questions through. So let's see. Nextdoor post. Okay, so it must be your neighborhood must be talking on Nextdoor about this. So that's good that you guys have a community. Sign at Coventry. Good thing those stayed up. I know it was very windy the day I went out there and posted those signs. So fingers crossed that those stayed. So seems like the most unique one is Craig told me about it. So 35 people. Hopefully if there's any problems, yeah, it looks like the chat's going on. So hopefully those can get answered if there's any questions that are happening, although I don't have the chat pulled up. All right, 37 of you have responded. Letter was the most, so that's pretty good. You know, classic letter has been the most reliable thing here. All right, well, I will keep moving along, but if you didn't get to answer this question, there'll be more opportunities, and the same sort of, if you just leave your phone or your screen, you'll be able to chime in on the next one. So I'll flip back to the presentation. Okay, so as Craig mentioned, our project schedule, before I dive into where we are in the master plan, I just wanted to give a little background about where we are in the process and how we got here. So we started out first thing with the site analysis, really understanding what's out there, what's existing on the 200-acre parcel right now. You know, we looked at the natural landscape, the features out there, the tributaries. We looked at adjacent land uses, and we went and visited the site. We took all this documentation. We had Third Rock, our consultants, helping as well, all to sort of inform us about the plan and how we make decisions. Some of the big things that came to really the forefront of our mind when we did this that I just want to point out, you know, Georgetown Road, that's the major front of the site, and KYTC does have future improvements along this piece of Georgetown Road. So we met with them, as Craig mentioned, to understand what those improvements are and how our plan can align with theirs. And this also means along Georgetown Road, that is the access into the parcel. So it's really going to dictate how the roadway network within the parcel operates. So it's just an important piece to keep in mind. The legacy trail. So this has become a really valuable resource in our community, and it runs along the northern edge of the property. And so, you know, from a future land use standpoint, how does that become integrated? Is there a connection opportunity here? Really, it's a valuable asset that we want to make sure we're thinking about in the future. So another polling question, if you reach back down to those devices, how often do you use the legacy trail? So those of you who are on, I'm just curious how often you've been using it. And probably a lot more, hopefully, during the pandemic, because it's a really nice way to get out there. And I might need to switch back over. For some reason, it won't do it in person. Oh, sorry, these are not in order. Oh, okay, here we go. Looks like a few times a year is the most, followed by never. It's really valuable. Highly recommend it. And hopefully we can make it easier for you all to access that. So we have 40 people responding. That's a pretty good number, bigger than the first time. Oh, weekly is pretty good too, 7. All right, let me flip to the next question that we have is related to this one. And that one is, for those of you that live in Kearney Hall or Coventry neighborhood, if there was a direct connection to the legacy trail for you, would you use it more often? So you wouldn't have to get in your car and drive around to the trailhead, or you wouldn't have to get on your bike and go down Citation in Georgetown. Would you use legacy trail more? So it looks like, yeah, some of you obviously don't live around this area, so probably wouldn't make too much of a difference, but yeah, so it looks like pretty positive there. $38 of you, 39 response.
For those of you who are not able to do the Menti, I am following the chat. So if you just answer there, we'll keep track of that too. That's fine.
Thanks, Louis. All right, let's switch back to the presentation now. Sorry for this back and forth. Technology sometimes just doesn't want to work, but we'll make do. So other things that we thought about initially when we went back and looked at the site was, you know, this site is in the Cane Run watershed, which what that means is the water that lands in this watershed eventually makes its way down to an aquifer below ground that is the drinking water for Georgetown. So, you know, not only is the storm water important for that aspect, but we also have tributaries here. A lot of you all responded on the website that, you know, the habitat is very important and you want to make sure that that's preserved and protected. You know, we also recognize that there's adjacent neighborhoods to this parcel. So, you know, Coventry, of course, we've already mentioned, is directly south, and we have a property line that borders with those parcels. And then Kearney Hall is across Georgetown Road. So just want to, you know, keep those in mind as we start planning. So the next question is, do you live nearby? Oh, and now it wants to work. So great. We're curious, for those who are on the call, I mean, let me check and see how many people are on here right now. We have 60 still participants. I'm curious how many live directly nearby this parcel. So whether it's Coventry or Kearney Hall. Maybe it needs to be switched over to this one. No, yep. Some reason it's not updating all the way, but it looks like, wow, a lot of Coventry neighborhood folks here on, so that's great. That's 40 of you, and most are from right nearby. It's really good turnout. All right, I'll switch back to the slideshow. Okay, so what does this all mean in context before we start planning? We recognize these sort of pieces and parts are important that we need to keep in mind. So you'll see on this map here, we've indicated, you know, there's a very sensitive edge that we have on the southern part of the parcel. Coventry neighborhood's right across from us and from that parcel, and we want to make sure that we understand that edge is very sensitive. You'll see the three sort of tributaries across that break up the parcel, and those all, again, feed into the Cane Run stream. We have identified a couple sinkholes on site, so we want to make sure that we're being responsible developers and keeping those safe and preserving those. We also are highlighting sort of the two access points that KYTC has included in their improvements plan. So these are access points into the site where we could have intersections where you could turn in and out. And then also a couple more things, you know, looking at the possibility of connecting these neighborhoods to the Legacy Trail because it's such a valuable asset. It seems like a shame to not have a direct connection through this site. And then from just an economic development standpoint, you know, the higher parts of the parcel are really, you can see them from the interstate, which is a great asset to have for those future tenants. So thinking through all these pieces, that really helps guide us in the future and how we think about the master plan of the site. So when we start putting pencil to paper, we actually took a step back and thought about the comprehensive plan. So what are the big goals in that plan as we as a community have decided upon and agreed upon? These are things that we are feel important to. So pulling those pieces out and how we felt like they could tie into the master plan of the site. So it's things like protecting and enhancing natural resources and landscape. It's about attracting and retaining high-paying jobs, and even activate undeveloped land holdings within the urban service area. There's a direct correlation to that piece in the comprehensive plan and this parcel in particular because it is within the urban service boundary. So we want to keep in mind those all when we start master planning. And of course, We've met with a variety of stakeholders. We'll continue to meet with these stakeholders to understand all of the different pieces that will affect this master plan. And hopefully you all will have already seen this website. If not, the address is up here on the screen, www.coldstreammasterplan.com. We launched this back in January, and so far today, I just took these numbers down. We've had 850 unique visitors, so not coming back and forth, but independently unique. You can follow the website if you're interested in it. So click follow, and anytime we update the website, you'll get sent an email with those updates. And then the other, of course, important piece of the website is that you can add comments. So we have a selection of questions up there that people are responding to, and you can respond to other people. So it's kind of this ongoing community conversation that's happening. And there's been really great responses, and we've been able to see kind of what people are thinking prior to this meeting. It's been very, very helpful. You know, things such as a bus stop was brought to our attention. You know, let's get Lextran involved and see if we can get a bus stop on the site. You know, enhancing the nature out there, connecting to Legacy Trail. These are some of the themes that we've seen on the website. You can get on there yourself and check those out and add your own thoughts as well. So back to the slide, I think that Craig shared initially is sort of what's the point of the master plan? What are we doing here? You know, it really is about economic development and job creation, but we realize that there's things within this plan that can help benefit the community as well. So as we start to think about that, open space is one of the things that kind of bubbles to the surface, right? So LFUCG requires open space in various different zones. What that means from their end is either it's a natural landscape open space or it's a usable open space, or a combination of both. So how do we see that play out on the site, and how can it be a benefit to our community, and especially the neighborhoods that are really close? So we've thought of 4 kind of big goals for what this open space could do. The first is preserve and protect natural features in the landscape. And what that means is, you know, we've identified these during our site analysis and the existing conditions. There's 3 tributaries, there's open water, there's wetlands, there's sinkholes. And so we just want to make sure that in our plan, we do everything to preserve those natural resources. The second goal is to be good neighbors to the adjacent properties. Of course, we want to be good neighbors. And that means, you know, understanding that that border with Coventry is very sensitive, and how that will be, how will that integrate into the master plan, and also being a good neighbor by allowing public access through and possibly connecting to the Legacy Trail. So the third is to provide shared space for future tenants and the community. So what this means is within that open space requirement from the city, you know, in a general development plan, each parcel has to provide their own open space requirements. So that could look like a scattering of open spaces across a parcel like this. But in our master plan process, we're actually looking at what if you combined all that open space requirement for the whole 200-acre parcels into a combined open space network system that could be more valuable than the independent pieces that generally would happen in a development like this. And then provide multimodal connectivity to and through the site. You know, that's something that ties right directly into the comprehensive plan. You know, that's pedestrians, that's cyclists, and even, you know, the possibility of Lextran. And then, you know, making sure that that's not only getting access to the site, but also because the Legacy Trail is so close, making sure that that is considered in the master plan. So taking all 4 of these open space goals and what does it look like when we combine them all together? And one of the things we're going to do here is if we just take this central tributary corridor that's kind of boxed on the site on this map right here, if we slice through that and think about the future, what could it look like? And so the next slide will kind of give a glimpse at what this sort of could be. And I know it might be a little difficult to imagine, but if you think about that tributary area, the minimum requirement is a 25-foot stream buffer, but what if we expand that and include all these open space goals within that sort of corridor? And this is sort of this magical thing that we get, right? So, all of a sudden there's this connectivity for habitat. There's, stormwater infrastructure can be integrated into the buffer in a more natural green infrastructure way, so we can clean that water that runs off of the developments before it gets into the aquifer. We can provide that sort of connection to the neighborhoods, to the legacy trail on a multi-use path. So really they all work hand in hand and create a bigger asset for the site in the future. So that's really that's the vision, and we'll walk through kind of how that looks in plan view and the pieces of how it becomes integrated together. All right, so another polling question. Looks like we're getting some answers, but let me flip over to this to make sure we're getting all of them. So really, this question is to ask, what's important to you? Of these 4 goals that we talked about, which ones really ring true to you, or are there some that really don't seem that necessary? Or so it looks like we have 13, 14, 16 people that have voted. So again, that the goals are preserve and protect the natural features, be good neighbors to adjacent properties, provide shared open space for future tenants and the public, and provide multimodal connectivity to and through the site. So it looks like being good neighbors is high up there, and it should be. It sounds like a lot of you on this call are within Coventry or Kearney Hall, so that's really good, of course. 35. So all of these do seem to be pretty important. No one's ranking any of these low, which I would expect that would be the case. So, or hopeful that would be the case. And that doesn't mean that any of them will get cut out just because you say you don't care about them. So they're all important in my eyes. All right. Okay, let me switch back to the presentation.
Aaron,
Oh.
while you're doing that too, Craig and I were just talking in the chat. I think we will try to get this copy of the presentation up on the website so it's available for everyone, because I think that might be a question multiple people have. It might take us a day or two just to get it up, but we'll put it there and it'll send out an update. So everybody knows.
Great. All right, so if we get down to the 2 master plan alternatives that we've developed as a team, these are still in the early phases of planning, and there's still a lot to get figured out, but I'll walk through these 2 alternatives through a series of layered, so that way you can understand from a plan standpoint what we're looking at. If you take the parcel, the first sort of framework that we looked at was the roadway connectivity framework, really because the access points controlled by KYTC really kind of dictate where we can connect in and out of the site from. So, across from Kearney Hall neighborhood, we really suggested strongly that become a signaled intersection from a safety standpoint, just understanding that especially if we want to think about bringing people, pedestrians or cyclists across Georgetown, that signal to intersection would be the safest way to do that, and it would help with traffic overall. And then the secondary access would not be signaled, but both of those intersection points would have dedicated turn lanes in and out of the property, so there wouldn't really be any traffic issues with the areas south or north of Georgetown Road. And so then within the parcel, the roadway network really landed where it did because of our parcel sizes. So we kept in mind how the land sort of began to break up between the roadways, and we shot for about what you'll see on the screen is about 8 acres and ranges all the way up to 20 acres in some instances. But this sort of eastern side of the property, the skinnier portion of the property, that central drive, breaks up that back half of the lots to have lots on both sides of the roads. And then as we layer in that open space, you know, we start to look at those tributaries that cross and creating a protective buffer for those, but also integrating, you know, stormwater management into those buffers. So they grow from 25 feet to much larger. And we also have a setback and a landscape buffer across the parcel line between Coventry and the project site. And we're also preserving, you know, open space around those sinkholes as well. And what does that look like then when we start to layer in an actual open space, usable open space? And so as we've discussed earlier, we're thinking through this connectivity to the legacy trail, and it becomes a 12-foot wide usable multi-use trail similar to the legacy. And, you know, we're pulling, we're helping Kearney cross Georgetown at that signaled intersection. It follows the central roadway and connects over to the legacy trail along the tributary. And then also the 2 arrows that you see into Coventry neighborhood, those are just pedestrian or cycle access points. They aren't vehicular, but connecting in and actually even creating a little loop scenario. It's about a mile loop there for those neighborhood residents. And then, you know, we're exploring too the possibility of a public trailhead. You'll see in the picture there, that's what the trailhead over at the UK Research Coldstream trailhead looks like. So, you know, a small set of public parking spaces and some information for people accessing the trail. But that's really sort of the first alternative. And the second one is very similar. What you'll see the difference is here is we've explored the idea of the back, sort of the eastern side of that central drive. If it swings closer to the neighborhood, then the neighborhood has a public roadway next to it instead of a lot. And so what does that mean for the lot sizes within our development? You know, you have larger ones, but they're separated from the neighborhood by a roadway. And then, you know, similar approach here, we're layering in the open spaces, the protected buffers, the stormwater integration. Again, we keep the setback and buffer from the from the Coventry neighborhood along the southern border of our site. And the open space network looks very similar. So again, we're pulling folks across from Kearney Hall, across a signaled safe intersection, along the main drive. We create another loop around sort of the parcel closest to Coventry. The public trailhead in this scenario sits back further into the site. This is possibly on either scenario coincides potentially with a Lexington bus stop, hopefully, if we can get the route extended into the site. This is kind of another kind of look at what those pieces would look like in the future. So these are just some precedent images to help you understand what those look like. So one of the, I think probably the main thing that everyone will be curious about is what does that buffer off of the back of Coventry look like? And what you see on the screen here is if we were to do, if a typical development were to come in here without sort of this open space network that we're creating, the code minimum requirements for this are a 15-foot landscape buffer, 100-foot setback, but within that setback you can have parking. There's an existing utility line and some existing tree lines along that back fence. So if you look on the right side of this section, this is a residential house, their backyard, the existing fence line with some trees, the utility, the landscape buffer, and parking that would happen. So that's not what we're proposing here, but it is like that is the minimum requirements of a developer in a scenario like this. But if we look at what we're exploring, and again, this is along the back eastern edge of the property where we're up next to Coventry. If we look at this section, what we have in there is 100-foot setback, but it includes the sort of multi-use trail buffer within that zone. So layering in all these things, the buffer, the multi-use trail really creates this deeper, stronger buffer between the neighborhood and the developable lots. And if we look at the second option that the alternative that we looked at on the screen, instead of a lot being on the other side, you have the public roadway. And so again, you get a similar scenario where you have the existing neighborhood, their backyards, the existing landscape, a utility easement, which is existing, and then our landscape buffer integrated with the multi-use trail, and it becomes the sidewalk side of a public road. And then on the other side of that public roadway would be a lot, which you see up here is a sort of the zoomed in plan to understand the differences between those two plans. And I'll switch over to the slides on my other screen here, but we're wanting to get some feedback from the neighborhood. Basically, if the project were to establish this buffer from the back edge of the residential property, which would you prefer? Would you prefer that lots be on the other side of that buffer, or would you prefer a roadway to be on the other side of that buffer? And we can flip back in a second to those two options again, but you know, I think hopefully you'll understand that the both of these options are above and beyond the minimum requirements, and really we're trying to integrate all of these different aspects that we know will make this site better in the end. So it looks like 24 of you have responded, and most votes are for the roadway. I don't know if doesn't look like any questions have come up on this. Can we connect the streets from Coventry to the new streets? That's a great question, and actually we have it on a polling question coming up. So right now we don't provide, or the plans aren't showing a public street connection, a vehicular connection from the development to Coventry. But we want to ask you if you would want to see that. So we'll switch over to that question in a minute.
Real quick, I got a request to look at the different buffers again, I think.
Yeah, let me switch back to the slides. Okay, so here is the one with the lot essentially on the other side of the buffer, and the roadway kind of splits the middle of the parcel. So you have the existing landscape fence line, an existing utility easement. We have a 20-foot buffer, the multi-use trail, and another 20-foot buffer, creating this whole 100-foot residential setback before there could be parking or a building. And then the other alternative is we have a similar situation with existing fence line, existing utilities, a 20-foot buffer, the multi-use trail, but on the other side of the multi-use trail, we have a tree-lined streetscape. And then on opposite of that, you'll see in this plan up in the corner would be parcels.
Hathaway?
Yes.
Would you mind discussing the kind of traffic that would be coming on this roadway so everybody knows? Because this isn't going to just be a normal residential street. And I think that there might be some confusion with that.
Sure, it wouldn't be just a residential street. It actually, if you're familiar with the Bluegrass Business Park near this area, I think it's at the corner of Georgetown and Citation. That is kind of the types of businesses that would be here in the future. Those you know, do have some heavier truck traffic, but the light industrial zoning that comes along with that does have, you know, all this restrictions on noise, light, all that, you know, would be, would fall within that and it would be limited by LFUCG. So I don't know if that answers your question.
And we'll get to the poll question here in a second, but I think we didn't show roadway connections between the development site and Coventry because we felt like most of that traffic was going to be a mix of sort of truck traffic and people going to work sort of traffic that felt like for the most part, we wouldn't expect people to want that to just be coming through Coventry as a cut through to get back out to Georgetown. But we definitely want your all's thoughts and input on that for sure.
Let me switch back to this slide and see if any others have. Looks like 27.
It looks like Mr. Blevins would like to, can we re-poll the buffer question now that we've clarified it maybe a little more?
Yeah. Oh, like reset it.
Yeah,
Let me check. Yes, I think I can do it, but it might reset
you don't reset the whole thing?
No, just on this slide. I think. Fingers crossed this works. Okay, go. You know, it's interesting internally, we've talked about this, and I don't, well, you know, obviously I don't live in either of these neighborhoods. I live close, but not in either of these. But I think that both are valid approaches. You know, we're providing a pretty substantial buffer between whichever one falls there. So I don't think there's a wrong answer here. It's not a trick question.
Yeah, and I think, you know, trying to keep the everything looks small on this plan because we're so zoomed out because it's such a huge piece of property. But 100 feet is it's a very significant distance, especially if you have all the landscape features and things in there too.
That's right. Another thing I'll say is that we are basically taking all these questions that we're asking you tonight and putting them in a digital survey. And for those who can't either answer or weren't able to join the meeting, we'll be able to provide a link to that survey. So these questions could get answered by more folks. All right. I will switch back to the presentation. And I think a couple of other questions are coming up that, okay, let me, sorry, I'm switching back and forth here. Okay, question from an anonymous attendee. I hope fits into this type of question is, would you like to see commercial businesses along the Georgetown Road frontage? And then we have a follow-up question about this as well. So in the next slide, I think we ask what types of businesses you would, if you want to see, which ones would you like to see? Which I'll flip to in a second. Okay, some pretty good answers, pretty positive for the most part. We have 58 participants and 35 are responding. And again, I think Lewis mentioned if you can't get Menti to work, feel free to drop it in the chat as well. It's another way to respond. Okay, so if we were to have businesses, commercial businesses along Georgetown Road, what type would you like to see? And this is sort of an open-ended question. You can put in whatever you think would be, you know, whether it's a community asset type business or whatever it is that you think would fit there well. I think you can put in more than just one as well. So I can't remember how I set this up, but looks like we have a lot of grocery stores, retail, grocery, restaurants, medical offices, not factories, pharmacy, hotel, like Great Wolf Lodge. That's a fun one. Lowe's.
And
Office
Aaron,
buildings.
just to clarify, based on a comment I saw, this is talking about one or more parcels directly adjacent to Georgetown Road, not the entire site. So we're just talking about, you know, a community-based business that would be directly, you know, adjacent to the roadway there.
Yep. Let's see. New high school. Anything except a factory. No car lots. A lot of grocery and a lot of restaurants. Age inclusive vet offices. All right, that's really great feedback. Let me, oh, I think the rest are actually. All right, so this is answers or ask the question that another person had asked. What we're asking here is, in the future, if there was commercial businesses along Georgetown, or you worked here in this parcel, would you want a direct street connection from the Coventry neighborhood and connect into that street network that's within the parcel? And I think, as Louis said, we aren't showing that now just because of the fear of traffic coming through the neighborhood more than that would be ideal. But, you know, it is a consideration if you live here and work there, you know, that direct vehicular connection. Okay, we have about 20, almost 30 responses. Most say no, some are maybe. All right, I'll move on. Okay, so in addition to the open space, we kind of talked big picture about a network and how there could be a trailhead or a loop system, but we wanted to ask a little bit more detail from you all about what you would like to see specifically. And so, you know, we're asking which ones would you like? We have educational opportunities with signs, a bike fix-it station, bike racks. We have that looped sort of mile system, a trailhead where people could park there and could potentially have a bus stop as well. And then, you know, if you want all of them, all of the amenities is an option as well, but just trying to get a gauge of what people are interested in that they would like to see out there. Looks like a lot of the trail kind of stuff. The trailhead, the seating along it would be nice. All of the amenities. Okay. All right. So, you know, just a couple more questions left before we open it up to Q&A, but we wanted to try to make sure we captured some things. So, I think this is open-ended, but we just wanted to ask, you know, what did we miss that you are concerned about? So hopefully we're thinking through all these pieces as we push the master plan forward. We want to make sure we get your feedback and we hear what your concerns are. How soon will the stoplight be installed at Kearney Hall? That would be part of the construction process, which wouldn't happen until at the very minimum next summer. You know, it would have to be designed, it would have to go through permitting with KYTC, and then it would have to be built. So that process would start, you know, anywhere from middle of this year and then be implemented at the earliest next summer, at the earliest. What are you actually truck parking lot next to Kearney? So a lot of these concerns, buffer plans for west of Drummond Drive. A lot of good concerns. Safety of pedestrians crossing at the light, absolutely. Noise and crime. Tree trimming along Coventry. That's any plans for structures. Any plans of use of existing? No, that most of the structures on the farm would be removed by UK before the property transfer would happen. Don't know when Georgetown Road will be widened. That the improvement plan from KYTC is it doesn't have a date set for it. It is a priority, but it just depends on how other projects stack up against it and when that will actually be implemented. There would not be access to 6475 from the site. And we can answer some of these in Q&A as well. I will go to the next one. What plan features are you most excited about? So out of the things we've talked about today, is there something that really jumps out at you that you are excited that you've seen that you weren't prepared for or that you were hoping for? Awesome.
As you read that question, I was like, oh, I really hope people answer this. Answer this question.
Nobody answers. Fail. Yeah, these are great responses. You know, and hopefully in the, you know, the big goals and this, a lot of this comes across. Let's see, then this presentation of this meeting is set for an hour and a half and we're about an hour in. The last slide that we have is just about ways to stay, well, actually we have a Q&A slide and then we have ways to stay involved. So that's what's left on the agenda. I can switch back to that at this point. I think there's still a couple of things trickling in. But Q&A wise, Craig, I don't know if you want to talk about how we are going to run the Q&A.
Certainly. So if you are an attendee and you'd like to be brought into the meeting, either for comments or to ask questions, you should see a symbol. I think it'll be along the bottom of your screen where you can raise your hand, where you can raise like a blue hand on the screen. And if you do that, I'll see that next to your name and bring you into the meeting. So feel free to do that whenever you'd like. In the meantime, I think we can answer some of the Q&A questions that were a little bit more in depth, and I'm scrolling through those now to bring one up. One question that's come up a few times is regarding timeline of the project. As we mentioned earlier, we're expecting that this property will transfer to the city by mid-2022. And the anticipation is that we will start on infrastructure improvements as soon as possible after that point. We're working on developing a marketing plan in the near future, and that will really help inform timeline as well. So in the near future, we will have more information regarding the timeline for the development of the site. This one I think would be best answered by Kevin, if you'd like. It's what is the master plan for economic development? What I've seen is what we have, what the community has suggested. Haven't seen what you guys are really planning for providing jobs. What kind of businesses are you looking at? So they're just looking for more information on what the vision is for the economic development and job creation on the site.
Well, Craig, we're currently doing a new assessment of where our businesses are, and Dr. Clark at UK has helped us with that. And we're probably going to take the next phase of that starting in July to kind of come up with a revised strategic plan on what the growth sectors are here. As of today, there are things like advanced manufacturing. And when you look across the road at the Bluegrass Business Park, you think about Webasto, Tiffany and Company, Big Ass Fans, those kind of businesses. Business and professional services is another thing we recruit here. That's legal, finance, headquartered type operations, many of which you would see over on the other side of Coldstream on the part that UK has today. Life sciences, health and medical, those type of businesses. And those are businesses, quite honestly, that could outgrow UK, outgrow Coldstream and need more space, which would be a great university connection. Software and IT companies, visitor industries companies. And when I say that, I'm not talking in restaurant, hotels. I'm talking about things like the LBX Customer Experience Center that's over right behind Coventry. And then the new thing that we're spending time on is ag tech. And all those industries related to agriculture that have a technology-based component. So those are the ones we're focused on today. That is part of the strategic plan and has been that we work on with Commerce Lexington for some time. But again, we're revisiting that currently with Dr. Clark at UK.
Thank you. Just paging through some of the questions here. I think we've answered quite a few of these. Some of these came up during the presentation, I think, and were answered. One is regarding connection to the Legacy Trail. Yes, we're certainly proposing those connections where we can. We do have a hand up from Erica Howe. I will bring her into the meeting now. Ms. Howe, you've been promoted to panelist. If you'd like to turn on your video and speak, please feel free.
Hey, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Hey, sorry, it's actually not Erica, it's her husband, Sean. I don't have video on my phone. I was curious because has there been any plans for a new high school up this way? I only say that because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but at the time being, doesn't the high school district run from the Eastland neighborhood all the way around to Leestown Road, all going to Bryan Station?
I am personally unaware of of any plans for a new high school. I'm not sure if any of
Okay.
our have additional information on that.
And that I figured that might be the case. I was also curious, and it might be private development, but doesn't Coldstream already have a ton of open land for commercial development? I mean, there's tons of fields over there that are ready for development for commercial property.
There are some sites available for kind of research park type of development. There's some smaller sites as well that are south of this property. A&W recently moved in to one of those sites. So you're looking at smaller, typically, 3 to 5 acre sites. This particular property offers the opportunity for larger businesses that would be looking at parcels of land that are a bit larger than that. It provides some different opportunities in that regard.
Okay, that's cool. I was just curious. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Take care.
All right, I am not seeing any other hands raised in the attendees room. If anybody would like to make comments, please raise your hand.
I think there's a couple in the Q&A that I hadn't answered. I'll just roll through them.
Sure.
Some of them, I apologize. A lot of people are choosing the anonymous attendee thing and in a chain, and now it's hard to follow who asked what. The first one was asking for dedicated left turns on, it looks like onto Georgetown Road from Coventry if the roads were connected. I'm assuming that means if the roads were connected from the 200 acre site to Coventry, would there be adjustments made at Coventry? I don't think there's any plans for roadway adjustments outside of the 200 acre site. But I also, just generally based on feedback we've heard, don't know that the roads are going to be connected. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. But if I'm misunderstanding your question, please let me know. We had another one. This is like a fantastic question. How much weight do our opinions have in regards to businesses that will be put in place? I'll take the bullet on this one. I think your opinions are extremely important, and that's why we want to have these meetings and have been engaging with the community throughout. I'd say when it comes to any sort of land development, the most important thing to understand are, I think, the market dynamics that are at play. So at some level, even any developer who owns a piece of property needs to be able to find an end user who's willing to come there. And that's a really critical piece. I think Kevin and Craig have done a great job of, there's a vision for what this site should be, and it should be, helping elevate the community, and I think have a very net positive impact for everyone. So I think having that feedback, especially along Georgetown Road on the commercial, I think we've heard everybody loud and clear there. There's a lot of interest there. I think we've heard that consistently throughout the process. So your input is extremely important. But I get asked that a lot in plans all across the country when people want a very specific thing, and that sometimes works out and sometimes it doesn't. So I think there's a lot at play there. This one, I'll throw this one to Kevin. Would it be possible to purchase extensions to backyards that border the UK dairy farm?
Lewis, I think it's a good question. Our agreement with the university is for this to be job creation land. We've tried to address the connections, as you know, and Aaron mentioned earlier, with the extended buffers that are there. So I would think that would probably not be an option, candidly.
Kevin?
I see one in the chat for someone asking what the width dimensions are of the large green space. I'm not sure if they're asking what the width of the buffer is. That's typically 100 feet if I'm understanding correctly.
Right, the buffer off of Coventry is shown at 100 feet, but the width of the stream corridor or the tributary corridor varies significantly. Averages 500 feet.
Thanks for your patience, everybody. I'm scrolling through questions here, trying to make sure we're addressing everything. There was another one regarding whether the presentation will be sent out to us. Just as a reminder, the website coldstreammasterplan.com is available for updates, and we will be posting the presentation on that website within the next day or two. So that will be available soon.
Along with a copy of the sort of same questions that we posted here tonight. So if you felt like you weren't able to answer all of them or want to reflect back on that, that those questions will be available through like a Google form document.
This one's not so much a question, but a statement. It's saying Kearney Hall residents have been advocating for a stoplight at the entrance for a long time. As it's been often difficult to access Georgetown Road, any shortening of the timeline on this would be much appreciated. We are definitely coordinating as we move forward with this plan. We're coordinating with KYTC on that. So any opportunities to shorten that timeline is a benefit to all the parties involved, all the stakeholders. So we'll continue to push in that regard.
There's a couple of questions in here about taxes. One question, will taxes go down with more businesses available to pay taxes?
You know, Louis, I'll answer that. We've been fortunate that things like payroll taxes have remained steadily flat for many years now. It's something the council takes into account every time they look at a budget, what the revenue model needs to be. So, you know, there are a lot of factors that go into play. Our expenses continue to go up, as both our council members know. So hopefully when you grow jobs, you're keeping up and you're able to at least keep the taxes at a flat level. But it's something, and Councilmember McKern or Councilmember Plumman may want to weigh in, but it's something that they have a continual lens on.
If I may, I'll chime in with that too. I do appreciate that answer. I'd love, you know, obviously we'd all love to see taxes go down, but I think that the point of it has remained steady for 8+ years. As revenues, you know, remain or increase, yes, with our businesses coming in, but cost of living and everything else is going up as well. Cost of goods for the city too, which we are fortunate that we have not changed our taxes, and I do not hope to change our tax structure unless it does have an effect to go down. I know that we have seen in the past, Fayette County Public Schools has increased their tax rate in the past several years, but Fayette County Public Schools and LFUCG are two different entities. So we hope to at least keep our module the same, or if we have the opportunity in the future, I'd love to see it go down, but I would at minimum want to keep it the same.
Thank you both. There's another question. Can you talk about the projected effect this development will have on property values of neighboring homes?
I think everybody's probably struggling with that one a bit because it's really tough to project what a development what the impact's going to be to property values. Certainly on this site, the property values are going to go up. Typically, good quality development will raise property values throughout a community, but I don't want to make inferences about what those results will be.
But I just, and Craig's right, and I just want to add this. That's why we have really worked with Gresham Smith and the team on making an effort to do things like the paths, the trail, those kind of amenities that really help a community, not only our side of it, but the residential side of it as well. The quality of place.
I've seen this a couple of times. What's going in on the other side of the grade school? I apologize, I don't know what that is. Does anybody know?
I'm not sure what's going in there off the top of my head, but Jim Duncan, our Director of Planning, is in the attendees room. I'm glad to promote him to panelist here and see if Jim can help us out with that.
Craig, while you promote him in, if I may speak to a little bit of that. I know that the developer is, last time they spoke at the neighborhood association meeting, there's intention of extension of the homes to go over in that plot, but they were also trying to recruit businesses for the front facing to Citation off of Georgetown as well. They were working on small businesses like a smaller Target and some restaurant ideas of retail to go in there as well. I have not heard any update. I did send the developer a text message just a little bit ago when I saw that question, but I have not heard back yet. And hopefully I'll get a response by the end of this meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Duncan, anything to add to that? It sounds like that was a pretty thorough answer to that.
I believe the question was what was going in behind Coventry, the neighborhood and the elementary school in that vacant area.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's all going to be residential. It's going to be single family residential that looks very much like Coventry. That's what has been approved. There are some townhouses, but just this week the developer is seeking to change that to a single family detached. So at this time, the plan is to look very much like what is in Coventry already.
Excellent. Thank you.
Director Duncan?
Yes.
I'm sorry, just a point of clarification. Was any of that zoned for a business, like a B1 or B2 off of Citation?
Yes, the land that wraps around the corner of Georgetown and Citation is zoned B6P. That's the shopping center zone. That's the land that's long been thought to have been a place for a shopping center or a grocery store. But the zoning is already in place for that.
Okay.
And there is also some P1 zoning that's in front of the Remington Drive area. Also, that's the more office uses down there. So, but yes, along Georgetown and Citation, the corner, that is all presently zoned for shopping center.
I'm sorry, a clarification on that. I meant the north corner of Coventry side. Is any of that zoned for B1, B2, B2P?
No, of course, Coventry abuts the Coldstream Park. If we're looking at the same site, Councilmember Kern. So no, there is no additional land there. The school site itself is on a office zone, but of course they don't have to adhere to zoning. So there is nothing else on the east side of Georgetown Road or north of Coventry that is a business non-residential zone.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. If I misspoke, I've just gone off of word of mouth of what I've heard from the past. So my apologies if I'm misspeaking on the zoning there.
There is, Councilmember McKern, on the other side of adjacent to Kearney, there is a B1 area. Yes, there's yes, right there. That's an industrial area, and then just north of that is a commercial area that already has zoning in it.
Okay, thank you, Director. Thank you, Craig. Sorry about that.
So Craig, while we're kind of got Jim right where he is, the last, I'm in the chat questions now. And so when we worked with Erin and her team on some of the green space and open space, we took a long look at what Jim's division of planning was proposing moving forward for new development in Lexington. And those have not yet been approved yet, but we talked through what they were and we tried to take those into account for this site. And I think it's really helped for a better plan. Jim, the question in the chat, though, while we have you is, will these plans and requirements for green space and buffers be applied to the property adjacent to Kearney Hall that is being considered for a zone change from residential to industrial?
So that site that's adjacent to Kearney, that's also butts Spur Road, has already been zoned industrial. So any additional requirements for buffering or anything like that have already been established by the council. And then of course anything in the future that would be that zone would be subject to in the way of open space or buffering would be applicable to that site as well, if the rules are to change. So if they get more extensive before they actually develop that, then they would be subject to the new rules as they come along.
This one question, do you have an idea as to when the business list would be finalized and or available to the public? That's a Kevin question.
Yeah, I think if we're talking about the people likely to buy the property, that's going to happen over time. If you look at the Commerce Lexington Park, it was about 20 years before it was completely sold out. So there aren't any companies that have made offers or that we have talked to about pricing on this site as of yet, because we've still got a lot of work to do, obviously. I will say any transaction is a public transaction on this property. So it will have to go through the industrial authority. And most likely the council will have an approval at some point too, but it will definitely have to go through the industrial authority, which is an open and public meeting.
Thank you. And the last one that's in there, and I apologize, I'm not following the stream because I think this is still about this site down near the elementary school. So there isn't a potential Target or grocery in the lot by the school that is currently under construction, or there is in combination with the residential.
It sounded like to me that at the corner of Georgetown and Citation, that's where the commercial zone was.
And that does extend to and abut the elementary school site. So it's sort of an L-shaped lot that has that shopping center zone.
Yeah.
Another one, when the time comes, will you have only daytime construction? I'm guessing there's probably multiple ways to think about that question, because some of the stuff is going to be led by the city, and other pieces of it might be led by private companies. But I don't know the answer to that, Kevin. That'd probably be a longer term question.
I mean, in general, I think you have to have special permits to do construction outside of normal daytime hours. So I think it'd be safe to say that construction would only happen during the day.
Anytime a noise variance would be requested to work in the evening, though, we will I will be communicating that with the neighborhood if there is any potential for that to happen. And if there is issues happening with that, I'll give flack and push against it from continuing at that point.
Yeah, certainly it would be atypical to see construction happening outside of normal daylight hours. There's just a lot of challenges for that for the construction company as well. So we wouldn't expect to see too much of that.
like Councilmember McKern said, we've got a lot of different vehicles that we can use. Like I know I have Central Baptist campus with blasting going on, and we just go to next door and we just keep everybody in the loop on it. So be assured that, you know, we'll stay on top of it.
We're officially out of questions.
I think we are, and I'm seeing no hands up. So I think that means we have answered the current questions that people have. If you do have other questions that come to mind after this, please feel free to reach out. My contact information was on the letter that went out, and I think it was also at the beginning of this presentation. We'll make sure that information is posted to the website. There's also a contact mailbox, I believe, on the website as well. So there's multiple opportunities to ask questions and have those answered in the meantime. Thank you for spending your evening with us and for the great feedback. This was very useful for us. This helps provide some direction to the city as well as the project team in finalizing this plan and moving it forward with the industrial authority. So we very much appreciate your time, and we will be providing regular updates again on the project website, and that is coldstreammasterplan.com. In the meantime, feel free to get in touch if you have any questions or if you'd like to chat. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.